Good evening, my friend, and a very warm welcome to you. If this is your first time here, it is genuinely lovely to have you. For those of you who have been here before, welcome back. If what we do here speaks to you in any way, a like and a subscription would mean more to this channel than you know. Now, go ahead and put your headphones in. Find somewhere quiet and comfortable. Let your body settle and trust the night to do the rest. There are stories that were never meant to be rushed. Stories that ask something of you before they begin. Not much, simply that you set down whatever you have been carrying today. The thoughts that followed you home, the things left unfinished, the conversations still turning slowly in the back of your mind. Set them down gently. They will still be there in the morning if you need them, but tonight they are not required. This is the Sleep Channel, where the stories are ancient, the pace is slow, and sleep always finds its way to you. Tonight, we let our minds drift out into the cool quiet of the night, letting the stillness of the dark hours wrap around us like a familiar blanket. We turn our eyes upward, away from the heavy noise of the earth, and look toward the soft silver glow of the moon. There is an ancient truth held in that silver light, a memory that has survived thousands of years, deeply rooted in the old world. It is a story of a quiet grace, of a deep longing, and of a love so vast that the earth could not hold it, a story that people still look to the night sky to remember to this very day. To find its beginning, we must travel back to a time when the world was young, to an ancient land that existed long before maps could find it, a place of misty mountains and wide, quiet rivers that moved so slowly, the people living beside them did not think of them as water, but as something closer to time itself, moving slowly, carrying everything in this world. Under the watchful gaze of the heavens lived a mortal woman named Chang'e. She lived a simple life in a peaceful valley, moving through the world with a soft, radiant warmth. She possessed the kind of quiet stillness that made people stop what they were doing, breathe a little deeper, and remember that the world could be gentle. She was deeply loved, and she loved deeply in return. Her husband was Hou Yi, a man of immense strength and unparalleled skill with the bow. He was a fierce protector of the people. But when he was with Chang'e, his heavy hands grew tender. Together, they lived in harmony with the world around them, building their lives on the quiet, natural rhythm of the seasons. They expected their days to continue this way, peaceful, ordinary, and safe, completely unaware that the sky above them was shifting, and that the quiet world they loved was about to be changed forever. The change did not arrive with a sudden movement, or a loud declaration from the heavens. It came slowly, the way all quiet disasters begin. It began on a morning that should have been like any other one before. Hou Yi and Chang'e woke in their quiet valley, expecting the familiar cool mist to be draped over the grass, but the mist was gone, replaced by a strange heavy warmth that seemed to hang in the air before the sun had even cleared the horizon. And then the sky changed. Instead of the single gentle sun that had warmed the earth for generations, 10 suns rose together over the edge of the world. They were 10 great suns, bright and endless, filling the sky with a deep golden light that stayed through the hours when the dark should have returned. The world had never known such warmth, and it had no way to protect its quiet spaces. Slowly, the beautiful land began to fade. The wide, ancient rivers that had moved like time itself began to drop. Day by day, their banks grew wider as the water pulled back, shrinking into shallow streams, leaving behind dry stone under the unblinking gaze of the 10 lights above. Next came the fields and the forests. The green leaves curled in on themselves, turning yellow, then brown, and then drifting away before they could even touch the ground. The crops that fed the people bent low toward the earth, withered under a heat that had no intention of relenting shreds. Even the soil beneath their feet began to change. The moisture was drawn out of it, day after day, until the earth opened up in long, pale cracks across the valleys and the hills. People looked up at the sky and did not have words for what they were seeing. The world felt entirely too bright and entirely too still. They found themselves waiting for the evening to bring relief and for the moon to cool the warm air, but the night did not come. In their small home, Hou Yi looked out at the fading world. He saw the exhaustion in the faces of his neighbors, and he saw how the endless light made Chang'e's soft warmth grow faint and tired. There was no one else who could bring back the balance. The gods in the heavens were distant, watching the world from far away. But Hou Yi was a man who did not need words to understand his purpose shreds. His gift with the bow was not just a skill. It was who he was, completely and without question. He looked at his great bow resting against the wall, then looked at his wife, and knew what was required. He would bring peace back to the sky. He gathered his arrows, stepped out into the heavy warmth, and began the long, quiet walk toward the highest mountain in the land. The climb up the mountain was long and entirely silent. Step by step, Hou Yi moved upward, leaving the quiet valley behind him. The air grew thinner as he climbed, but the heavy warmth followed him, pressing down on the ancient stone paths like a great weight. He did not rush. He maintained a slow, steady rhythm, saving his strength for the task that waited at the summit. When he finally reached the highest peak, he stood closer to the heavens than any mortal had ever stood before. Below him, the earth stretched out like a pale, dry canvas, waiting for relief. Above him, the 10 suns sat in a wide row, shining with a bright, motionless light that filled every corner of the sky. There was no wind at the top of the world. Everything was perfectly still, frozen in a single endless afternoon. Hou Yi stood in the center of the peak and let his breath settle. He took his great bow from his shoulder. The wood was old, smooth from years of use, and familiar in his hands. He did not feel anger, and he did not feel fear. He felt only the deep stillness that always came to him when he looked at the sky. Slowly, carefully, he reached into his satchel and withdrew his first arrow. He placed it against the string. He raised the bow, tilting it upward toward the bright lights above. With a calm, unhurried strength, he pulled the string back until it rested against his cheek. For a long moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. The archer and the sky became one. Then he released the string. The arrow left the bow without a sound, drifting up into the golden light, and far above, the first excess sun faded, dissolving quietly like a drop of water disappearing into a warm breeze. Hou Yi did not pause to celebrate. He simply reached for the next arrow, one by one. With the same smooth, steady movement, he drew his bow and let the arrows fly. Each time the string exulted, another light vanished from the sky, melting away into the blue expanse, leaving behind only a gentle, cooling trail of mist. He watched the 3rd sun fade, then the 4th, and the 5th. With every light that disappeared, the heavy weight pressing down on the world began to lift. The air grew lighter, the intense brightness softened, turning from a harsh glare into a calm, gentle evening hue. By the time he reached his 9th arrow, only 2 suns remained in the sky. He drew the string back one last time, released it, and watched the 9th sun dissolve into nothingness. He looked at his final arrow, but he did not place it on the string. He knew that a world with no sun would be cold and lost. The earth needed warmth, but it needed a gentle warmth, a single light that understood when to rise and when to set. So Hou Yi lowered his great bow. He placed the last arrow back in his satchel, and he looked up at the single sun that remained, moving across the sky with the quiet grace it had always possessed. On the mountain peak, The first cool breeze in many months drifted past his face. The long afternoon was finally ending, and the night was finally ready to return. As Hou Yi walked down the mountain, the world below him was finally exhaling. The heavy burning heat was gone, replaced by a cool, gentle evening air that moved softly through the valley. For the first time in many months, the sun set peacefully below the horizon, allowing a deep, quiet night to blanket the earth. In the sky above, the moon appeared, small and silver and entirely calm. When Hou Yi reached his home, Chang'e was waiting for him at the doorway. The soft radiance had returned to her face, and as they stood together under the cool moonlight, they felt a deep sense of peace return to their lives. The rivers were rising gently again, the crops were straightening, and the earth was healing. Because Hou Yi had brought balance back to the world, the distant gods in the heavens took notice. They were moved by his quiet courage and his incredible skill. One evening, as the moon shone brightly over the valley, a gentle mist gathered in their courtyard. Out of the mist, a quiet messenger from the heavens appeared, moving so softly that not a single blade of grass was disturbed. The messenger did not speak with a loud voice, but with a sound like wind moving through autumn leaves. The messenger extended a hand, holding a small, beautiful glass vial. Inside, a clear, pearlescent liquid glowed with a faint silver light, mimicking the reflection of the moon. "This is the elixir of immortality," the messenger whispered softly. "A gift from the gods for your service to the earth. If a person drinks it, they will leave their mortal limitations behind. They will float upward into the heavens, past the clouds, and live forever as a god among the stars." But the messenger offered a quiet warning. "The vial is small. There is only enough liquid inside for a single person to drink. It cannot be shared." With those words, the messenger dissolved back into the evening mist, leaving the small vial in Hou Yi's hands. Hou Yi walked back inside his home and looked at the glowing liquid, then looked at Chang'e sitting quietly by the window. He did not hesitate, and he did not have to think about his choice. To him, eternity meant nothing if he had to spend it alone. He loved the simple, mortal life he shared with his wife, and he could not bear the thought of leaving her behind on the earth. "I will not drink it," Hou Yi said gently, placing his hand over hers. Chang'e smiled, her heart full of warmth for her husband's devotion. Together they decided to keep the vial safe and hidden, away from the world, so they could continue living their quiet mortal lives in peace. They wrapped the beautiful vial in a soft cloth and tucked it safely away under their bed, believing that their love was the only true gift they needed. For a long time, life in the valley went back to its normal, peaceful routine. The single sun rose and set exactly when it was supposed to, and a cool night always followed the day. Hou Yi and Chang'e lived quietly, happy with the simple things they had. But secrets have a way of drifting through the air, even when they are hidden away under a bed. Hou Yi had a young student named Meng. He was a clever young man who came to learn how to use the bow from the great master. But unlike Hou Yi, his heart was not pure. He did not care about protecting the people or keeping the world in balance. He cared only about power, and he had secretly heard rumors about the glowing silver vial from the heavens. He wanted the potion for himself. He wanted to live forever and become a god, even if he did not deserve it. One bright morning, a great hunt was announced in the distant forests beyond the valley. Hou Yi gathered his bow and his arrows to lead the other hunters into the woods. He asked Meng to come with him, but the young student pretended to be sick. He lowered his head and said his body was too weak to travel. Hou Yi, believing his student was telling the truth, told him to stay behind and rest. Then he walked out into the valley, leaving Chang'e alone at home. As soon as the hunters were far away and the valley became completely quiet, Meng's sickness vanished. He rose to his feet and walked slowly toward Hou Yi's house, moving through the shadows so nobody would see him. Inside the house, Chang'e was sitting by the table, enjoying the peaceful morning air. Suddenly the door opened, and Feng Meng stepped into the room. His eyes were sharp, and his face did not have its usual polite smile. He did not use kind words. He looked directly at Chang'e and demanded that she hand over the hidden vial. He told her that he knew it was in the house, and he would not leave until he had it in his hands. The room grew very still. The pleasant morning light seemed to fade as a heavy silence settled between them. Chang'e looked at the young man and realized that she was entirely on her own. Her husband was far away in the deep woods, and she did not have the physical strength to fight a young hunter. But as she sat there in the quiet room, she did not panic. She remained calm, her mind working softly to find a way to keep the sacred gift safe. She knew she could not let a selfish person take the elixir. If Feng Meng drank it, he would bring chaos to the heavens, just like the 10 suns had brought chaos to the earth. Slowly, without making a sound, she stood up from the table. She walked toward the back of the room where the bed stood, her long robes sweeping softly across the floor. Feng Meng followed her closely, his eyes watching her every move, waiting for his chance to take the silver light for himself. Chang'e reached the side of the bed, her movements smooth and unhurried. She knelt down on the floor, her fingers slipping beneath the wooden frame to find the soft cloth she had placed there with her husband. Feng Meng stepped closer, his breath heavy in the quiet room, thinking he had finally won. But as Chang'e pulled the wrapped package into the light, she did not hand it to him with a calm and certain hand. She unfolded the cloth, exposing the small glass vial. The clear liquid inside glowed with that same faint silver light, casting a gentle reflection across her face. She looked at the student one last time, seeing the greed in his eyes, and she knew what she had to do before he could reach out his hand to snatch it. Chang'e lifted the vial to her lips. She tilted her head back and drank the clear liquid, downing every drop until the glass was completely empty. It did not taste like fire or power. It tasted like cool rain, like the fresh air of a winter morning, filling her body with a deep, peaceful stillness. Feng Meng stopped in his tracks, his eyes wide with surprise. He realized he was too late, and a heavy silence filled the room once more as the empty glass vial rolled softly across the table, coming to a rest without breaking. For a moment, nothing seemed to change. Chang'e stood by the bed, her breath even and calm, looking at the open doorway that led to the valley outside. But then a strange and wonderful feeling began to spread through her body. It was not a painful change, but a sensation of absolute lightness. The heavy weight of the earth, the pull of the ground beneath her feet, and the limitations of being a mortal began to melt away. Slowly, incredibly slowly, her sandals lost touch with the wooden floor. She did not jump, and she was not pulled by a harsh force. She simply became lighter than the air itself. Like a feather caught in a gentle evening breeze, her body began to float upward, rising toward the high ceiling of the room. Her long silk robes drifted around her like soft clouds, moving in slow motion through the quiet space. Feng Meng could only watch from the shadows, frozen in wonder and fear, as the woman floated right past him, entirely beyond his reach. She drifted out through the high window of the house, leaving the small room behind. The cool air of the valley welcomed her as she rose higher and higher into the open sky. Below her, the house and the green fields began to look small, shrinking into a peaceful pattern of shapes and shadows. She was floating up toward the heavens, away from the life she had built, and away from the husband she loved more than eternity itself. The sun was just beginning to touch the edge of the mountains when Hou Yi returned from the deep forest. He walked into the courtyard, his great bow resting on his shoulder, looking forward to the quiet warmth of his home and the smiling face of his wife. But as he approached the doorway, he felt a strange stillness in the air, a silence that felt completely wrong. Suddenly the door flew open, and Feng Meng rushed out into the yard. The young student's face was pale, and his eyes were full of fear. He did not look at his master, and he did not say a single word. He simply ran past Hou Yi, disappearing down the dusty road and out of the valley as fast as his feet could carry him. Hou Yi watched him go, a cold feeling settling deep in his chest. He hurried inside the house, calling out for Chang'e, he called, his voice echoing softly against the wooden walls. But no one answered. The room was completely empty. The pleasant morning air had turned cold, and the small table sat in the center of the floor, silent and still. Then Hou Yi's eyes fell upon the object resting on the wood. It was the small glass vial. It was uncovered, overturned, and completely empty. Hou Yi dropped his hunting arrows to the floor, the wooden shafts clicking softly against the ground. He understood what had happened. He turned on his heel and ran back out into the open courtyard, his heart beating fast against his ribs. He looked around the empty yard, then looked toward the green fields, and finally he turned his eyes upward toward the vast evening sky. High above the trees, a small dark shape was drifting through the blue It was Chang'e. Her long white robes were floating softly around her, billowing like gentle clouds as she rose higher and higher into the heavens. The wind carried her upward, away from the earth, away from the valley, and away from the life they had built together. Hou Yi ran through the fields, chasing her shadow across the grass. He called her name over and over again, his voice breaking in the quiet evening air, but she was already too far away. The wind carried his words down into the valley, away from her ears, leaving only the sound of the evening breeze to answer him. In his desperation, Hou Yi reached for his great bow. He pulled an arrow from his satchel, his fingers shaking as he placed it against the string. He was the greatest archer the world had ever seen, capable of hitting any target in the sky. He raised the bow, tilting it toward the clouds, and pulled the string back to his cheek. He looked up at the small shape of his wife, drifting under the first evening star. But as he held the string tightly, his arms began to lose their strength. He looked at the woman he loved more than life itself, and he realized he could never let the arrow fly. He could use his skill to save the world, but he could never risk causing even the smallest amount of harm to Chang'e. Slowly, carefully, Hou Yi lowered his great bow. He let the string relax, and he placed the arrow back into his satchel. He stood completely still in the middle of the wide, darkening field, his bow resting by his side, and he simply watched. He watched as the woman he loved drifted further and further into the deep blue sky, becoming smaller and smaller until she was nothing more than a tiny silver speck under the watchful gaze of the night. Higher and higher she went, drifting far beyond the reach of the tallest trees and the highest mountain peaks. The warm air of the valley faded away, replaced by the cool, crisp stillness of the deep night sky. Below her, the earth became a quiet map of dark hills, winding rivers, and tiny twinkling lights from distant village fires. Chang'e floated past the soft grey clouds that hung in the air like piles of sheep's wool. She felt entirely weightless, moving through the dark blue sky without any effort at all. But as the earth grew further away, a deep sense of loneliness began to settle in her heart. She looked at the endless space around her, filled with cold, bright stars that did not know her name. She missed the warmth of her home, the sound of the birds in the morning, and the steady presence of her husband. She knew she could not return to the ground. The potion had changed her, and her place was now among the heavens. But she did not want to wander forever. In the deep dark, she looked around the night sky, searching for a place where she could rest, a place that would feel close to the world she had left behind. And then she saw the moon. It was large and round, glowing with a soft silver light that felt completely familiar and comforting. It was the closest object in the night sky to the earth. Chang'e realized that if she stayed on the moon, She would never be too far from Hou Yi. Every night when the sun went down, she would be able to look out across the silver surface and watch over the quiet valley where her husband still lived. Slowly, her floating body began to drift toward the gentle silver light. When her feet finally touched the ground again, she found herself standing on a quiet, peaceful landscape. The surface of the moon was smooth and soft, covered in a fine silver dust that glowed beneath her sandals. There were no loud noises, no hot winds, and no heavy burdens here. Everything was perfectly still, wrapped in an eternal, calming evening. As she walked softly through the silver landscape, she realized she was not entirely alone. Near a small, ancient tree that grew in the center of a quiet valley, a small white rabbit was sitting on the ground. Its fur was as clean and bright as the winter snow, and its long ears twitched softly in the quiet air. The little animal held a small wooden pestle, gently grinding sweet herbs inside a smooth stone bowl, making a soft, rhythmic sound that filled the empty space. The rabbit looked up as Chang'e approached, its dark eyes calm and entirely friendly. It did not run away, and it did not fear her. It simply lowered its head in a polite greeting, as if it had been waiting for her arrival for a very long time. Chang'e knelt down in the silver dust beside the little creature and touched its soft fur with her hand. She had found her new home, a palace of quiet peace and silver light, where she would stay for the rest of time, watching over the earth and waiting for the night to bring her closer to the ones she loved. Back in the valley, the days moved slowly for Hou Yi. The house felt entirely too large, and the quiet spaces in the rooms felt heavy without the sound of Chang'e's voice. Every evening, when the sun dipped below the mountains and the long shadows filled the rooms, he would sit by the window, looking out at the empty yard where they used to walk together. He missed her soft warmth, and he missed the gentle way she moved through the world. One night, the moon rose over the edge of the valley, larger and brighter than it had ever been before. It was perfectly round, glowing with a deep silver light that washed over the trees, the hills, and the roof of his house. The air was crisp and completely still, without even a whisper of wind to stir the leaves. Hou Yi stepped out into the middle of the courtyard and looked up into the vast, open night. As he stared at the bright silver circle in the sky, he noticed something strange. On the smooth surface of the moon, there appeared to be a tiny, soft shadow. It looked like the outline of a beautiful woman sitting beneath a small, quiet tree with a little white companion by her side. His heart grew warm, and a gentle smile came to his face. He knew, without any doubt, that it was Chang'e. She had found a place of peace in the heavens, and she was looking down at him through the silver light. He wanted to show her that he was still there, that he had not forgotten her, and that his love was just as strong as it had always been. Hou Yi walked back into the house and gathered a small wooden table. He carried it out into the center of the moonlit courtyard, placing it right under the direct glow of the sky. Then he went to the garden and gathered the things his wife loved most when she lived on the earth. He placed a plate of her favorite sweet, juicy fruits on the table. He brought out small, round cakes that were shaped exactly like the full moon, sweet and golden, and finally he added a small vase of fresh white flowers that opened up in the cool night air, releasing a soft, pleasant scent into the yard. He offered these gifts to the sky, hoping the evening breeze would carry the love in his heart up to the silver palace above. When he was finished, Hou Yi sat down on the grass beside the table. He rested his hands on his knees and looked up at the bright moon, while far above Chang'e looked down from the silver dust, seeing the small table and the tiny form of her husband in the courtyard. They were separated by the entire sky, living in two completely different worlds. But in that quiet moment, as the silver light connected the mountain peak to the valley floor, they did not feel far apart. They felt a deep, comforting peace, knowing that they were sharing the very same night. The years passed smoothly over the valley. like water moving over river stones. Hou Yi continued to live in his small home, keeping the world safe with his great bow. But his favorite part of every day was always the evening. No matter how busy he was, he would always return to his courtyard when the sun went down, setting out his small table with sweet fruits and round cakes to greet the rising moon. And up in the silver palace, Chang'e never stopped looking down, sending her cool, comforting light to protect his path. Even though they lived in different worlds, their shared ritual brought a deep sense of peace to the entire valley. The neighbors saw how Hou Yi honored his wife, and soon other families began to follow his example. Every time the moon grew round and full, people all across the land would step outside into the cool evening air, setting up small tables covered in lanterns, fresh flowers, and sweet round pastries that looked exactly like the light above. They called these pastries mooncakes, made to celebrate the love that connected the earth to the sky. When Hou Yi's long, heroic life finally came to a peaceful end, the story of his devotion did not fade away. It was passed down from parents to their children, generation after generation, turning into a beautiful tradition that lasted for thousands of years. Even today, when the autumn air turns crisp and the moon shines largest and brightest in the sky, people still gather with the ones they love. They look up at the smooth silver surface of the moon, searching for the quiet shadow of the woman and her little white rabbit companion, remembering that true love is never really lost. It is a reminder that even when the ones we care about are far away, we are all resting under the very same sky, wrapped in the very same gentle light. And now, the story of Chang'e has come to its quiet end. The valley is still, the world is at peace, and the silver moon is watching over you. Let your mind rest, let your body grow heavy, and drift away into a deep, beautiful sleep. Good night.